Good morning, everyone, from Sharbling Monastery in India. I arrived here a couple of days ago for teachings with Thai Situ Rinpoche, who happens to be my ordination master. The monastery itself is located 2 hours drive. I think that it's east of Meklodganj of Dharamsala for anyone who's been in the area. We're coming out of monsoon, so it's still a little bit warm and very humid. I think that also very smelly. Everything smells of moist and other smells. Anyway, Siddha Rinpoche is going to give teachings from Gampopa's spiritual songs, and then everyone here is going to do a 1 week long retreat on Gampopa Guru Yoga. So that's what's happening for me in the next couple of weeks. So I would like to start with, first of all, thanking you guys for inviting me to come along once again. I had a few gigs in the past with Thubten Yeshe, orchestrated by the mighty Dundrup. And I started off when I was still living at Chenrezig Institute in Australia. And I was more stationary at that point in time. So it was quite easy to make a commitment and to do things regularly. But for the past 2.5 years, I've been on the run. I've been traveling around different places, India and Taiwan and China and Australia and New Zealand and Israel and Europe and blah, 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 blah. So it's more difficult to commit to a fixed schedule. So it's nice to be on board once again, just for a short stint. And maybe I'll start with just introducing myself, and then we'll get stuck into it. And so my name is Kama Tsundru, or Kartson. That's a contraction of Kama and Tsundru. That's my ordination name, and my other name, many people know me by my other name, it's Yaki. I was born in Israel, grew up in Israel, and got involved with Buddhism in my mid-20s. That was almost 30 years ago. And over the years, I've spent some time in India studying Tibetan. And 20 years ago, I moved to Australia and became one of the resident translators at the Chenrezig Institute Buddhist Center. And I lived at the center for 18 years, being the interpreter, the translator for the center, as well as the tutor for the advanced study program. And I taught also other courses as well. I've worked with other teachers over the years. So Geshe Sherab in Australia a few times. And so that's me in a nutshell, or in a nutcase, you might say. And so what I wanted to do today, actually, when I was requested by Dundrup to do this series of talks, he sent me the material. And yesterday I had a look at the website again to just make sure that I'm totally on board what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I saw I looked at what we're supposed to be talking about, what the expectations, what the outcome of the course. The outcome of this course, of this 3 series meeting, is like half enlightenment or more. And so I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to fulfill all the expectations, but I'll try as much as I can to cover the points that I prepared. But before we get started, maybe we'll take a minute or two just to correct our motivation. I don't know if all of you see yourself as Buddhist. Normally, when we start a Buddhist session, be it a meditation session or a teaching session, we start with correcting a motivation, with going for refuge and arousing bodhicitta, developing bodhicitta. And the idea is that we want to make sure that whatever activity we engage with, if it's a positive activity, that first off, it contributes to ourselves becoming Buddhist, being involved with the Buddhist tradition. And so we start with, first of all, going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Dharma and the Sangha. And then we also want to contribute to our own enlightenment, to the causes and conditions that lead us to our own enlightenment. So we also correct the motivation in terms of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So we do that at the beginning of our meditation, but also when we teach the Dhamma, when we listen to Dhamma teachings, when we discuss the Dhamma. It's good to do it also with refuge and bodhicitta. First off, we don't know, we will not go wrong, but also it's another opportunity for contributing to our going for refuge and to our bodhicitta. And so for those of you who are Buddhist practitioners, please feel free to join me. For those of you who do not see yourself as Buddhist, then that's completely fine. You can just think of opening your mind, maintaining a mind that is vast and spacious, and trying to find tools and strategies for dealing with your mind in a better, in a constructive way. Particularly since we're going to start today looking at anger and attachment and tools for dealing with whatever is happening to us in our mind, whatever challenges or difficulties. Then think that you're going to open your mind, listen with a clear mind and with a good heart, and try to find things that are going to benefit your life. So before we develop our motivation with refuge and bodhicitta, we can maybe take just 1 or 2 minutes to calm our mind. Remain silent for 1 or 2 minutes. And turn our attention to our breathing process as we breathe in and breathe out. And use our breath as an anchor for developing that is mind that settles down. Trying to find a balance, the balance between a mind that is too tight and too relaxed. A mind that can comfortably and easily remain focused on the breath. And we're going to do that for a count of 10. Counting 10 breaths. And as we correct the motivation with refuge and bodhicitta, we can think that all of us here, as representative of all living beings, everything that lives, all of us have a Buddha nature. First of all of us have minds, which are cognizant. All of us have minds which experience. All of us have a mind which knows. And from time to time, my mind is affected by afflictive emotions, by anger and attachment and jealousy and pride, and other states that afflict our mind. And none of them is ingrained within the nature of our mind. And since there is not even a single disturbing emotion, afflictive emotion, that is ingrained within the nature of our mind, anger is not the nature of our mind. Attachment is not the nature of our mind. We can develop strategies for shaping a mind to be perfect, shaping a mind to be Buddha, a mind that is free from all limitations, all disturbing emotions, a mind that is free from anger and attachment and ignorance and pride and jealousy. We can develop our mind to an utmost extent, limitlessly, when we rely upon the Buddha as the teacher, the Dharma as the actual refuge, and the Sangha as the company, the assistance that we use in order to apply the teachings to our life and to our mind. Not only for our own sake, but for the sake of all living beings upon which we depend. And if we think of the myriad lifetimes that we've already lived, and the ones that are still yet to come, and the network of connections and relationships that we have had with others, that we will have with others, that we are currently maintaining with others, I think that I'm going to do my best to develop my mind so that I can be of use to others as well, all of those who have contributed to my life since time without beginning up until now will become a Buddha for their end, for their sake. So with that in mind, I'm going to think, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the collections I gather through generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the collections I gather through generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the collections I gather through generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. All right. So let's look at what I've prepared for today. So we are going to look at anger, attachment, mainly at anger and attachment, but also, I think, ignorance, for it is almost impossible to find remedies or techniques for dealing with attachment and ignorance that are not connected with undoing or reducing our ignorance. And so I think that many of you have seen the Tibetan drawing, the Tibetan paintings of the wheel of existence, the wheel of life. You know, often it is depicted as being held, being held, being grasped by a fearful, scary monster. It depicts it's the very center are afflictive emotions, and it is surrounded by the 12 links of dependent origination, dependent arising, telling the story of how under the sway of anger, attachment, and ignorance, we find ourselves again and again in a samsaric birth. And so long as we remain in samsara, being born again and again under the sway of our afflictive emotions, we are bound to experience the suffering of birth, sickness, aging, death, looking for something, not being able to finding encountering things which are unpleasant, having to be separated repeatedly from things that we cherish, things that are dear to us. Everything can be pinned down to the control that anger, attachment, and ignorance have over our mind. And so at the very center of this diagram of the wheel of existence, we find the three afflictive emotions: anger, attachment, and ignorance. And so we have ignorance depicted as a pig, and attachment depicted as a bird. Often it is depicted as roosters, but I really like parrots. I really like cockatoos and macaws. And so you have here attachment as macaw, and anger is a snake. Anger, ignorance is the very foundation of all. Aryadeva, an Indian master that composed a text that is called The 400 Stanzas of the Middle Way, said that just as the physical faculty pervades the body, also ignorance pervades all of our afflictive emotions. Whenever there's an afflictive emotion arising in a mind, operating a mind, distorting reality, ignorance is found behind the scenes, pulling the strings. And so I want to begin with, first of all, ignorance in order to set the foundation for looking at attachment and looking at ignorance, looking at anger. Is it all right? Can you hear me well? Whenever I raise my hands, I can see there is an icon appearing on my screen, so that's quite nice. So let's look at ignorance. So there are different types of ignorance. To begin with, I think that the very basic level of ignorance is ignorance of unknowingness, ignorance of not knowing. I don't know French, I don't know Japanese, I've never studied Russian. I don't know how to cook Korean food. There's so many things that I don't know. I don't know each and every person that lives in the world, each and every insect that lives in this world. There's so many things that I don't know. So that's a basic level of ignorance, but that's not the mechanism that drives my samsaric existence. If I look at more deeper level of ignorance, there is ignorance with respect to conventional reality. And there are different types of ignorance that operate in our mind, not only in my mind, but in the minds of most living beings that we encounter during the day. So one of them is holding the impermanent to be permanent. So for example, when we think of our life, I think that no one here, I assume, no one here thinks I will never ever die. There's no chance in hell that I will die. Probably no one thinks like that here. And yet we have that idea that it will happen many years from now. I'm now in my mid-50s, and so maybe kind of this impending old age and death is kind of seems to be getting closer and closer in some sense. But there's still that notion, that idea that I have an ocean of time ahead of me. And so in some sense, you can say that I'm holding on to something that has some stability and endurance and some permanent features to it, and yet my life is changing from moment to moment. My body is changing from moment to moment. When I look at myself in the mirror, sometimes I get frightened, or I get shocked that I've aged. In my mind, I still have that idea that I am who I am, as if with a similar appearance to the person that I was when I was 20 and 30 and so forth. And so one type of ignorance is ignorance that is grasping at things which are impermanent to be permanent. Definitely when we get into relationships, we fall in love, we develop long-term relationship, and we have expectations that the person that we are in a relationship with will remain as they are from like the day that we fell in love with them, even 20 and 30 and 40 years ago, and we get so disappointed with so much angst about things changing, ourselves changing, and the person that we love changing. And so that's one type of ignorance. And of course, there are the things that we have in our possessions, things that are due to our heart. They break down, they deteriorate, they die. We experience a lot of issues, a lot of problems from expecting them to remain the way that they are. So that's one type of ignorance, ignorance that holds the permanent to be impermanent. Sorry, the other way around, the impermanent to be permanent. And then ignorance that holds to the unclean to be clean. Often a description of the body is given when this type of ignorance is being explained. And so when we develop attachment, certain desire, often sexual desire to another person, we tend to focus only on the beautiful and on the things which you see as clean and pristine and amazing. And we forget about all the other things which are not that pleasant. Not only when we develop attachment to other people, but also when we think of our own body. We shower our body, we pamper our body, we wear creams and beautiful clothes, and we think of doing our hair and makeup and so on and so forth. That's my daily routine. Without thinking that it is a machine, a mechanism that cannot be made perfectly clean and pristine. Not only the things that are happening on the surface, on the skin level, but when we think of what's happening inside the body, which often we prefer not to think of, in Buddhist scriptures, in Buddhist texts, it is often described as a putrid machine, putrid mechanism, thinking of the things that come into the body, the things that are extracted from the body. We hold the body to be clean, and yet it is in the nature of uncleanliness. So that's another type of ignorance. We have ignorance which holds to that which is in the nature of suffering to be pleasurable. And again, the most obvious example to that is looking at our body, which is in Buddhist philosophy, it is called the third type of suffering, pervasive suffering of conditionality. The moment we are born into this body, it is guaranteed that we will experience the suffering of aging, of sickness, of age, of encountering things which are unpleasant. We will definitely be separated from things that we like, things that cause us pleasure. We'll be separated at the end of our life from this very body. We will experience the suffering of death. We will experience the separation from people that are dear to our heart, from things which are dear to our heart, from certain ideas that are dear to our heart. So since we have this body, and also since we have our mind, it is guaranteed that we will experience various levels of suffering related to separation. And also we will definitely experience the suffering of death. And so while this body is a foundation, a basis for the experience of so many different types of suffering, we still hold on to it forcefully as if there's something that is pleasure and perfect in this body. Not only we hold on to it as if it is perfect and pleasurable, we have that idea that it can be made perfect. We can hold it at the brink of being made imperfect, as if we can ward off aging and sickness and death and all the rest. And so in Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist practice, we hold this body to be the most fundamental source of problems that we have, of course. The most fundamental source of issues and problems that we have is ignorance. But still, there is that idea that there is something that is good and pleasant and perfect in this very body. So it is the source of suffering here and hereafter, in this lifetime, but also in certain situations when we do not get what we want, or we get what we do not want, physical pleasure. Instead of getting physical pleasure, we get suffering and pain and uncertainty and dissatisfaction and so forth. We get angry. We perform actions that compound the suffering in future lifetimes as well. And so it is called conditional, pervasive suffering of conditionality. Conditionality in the sense that it conditions our experience of suffering, of dissatisfaction in this life, as well as in future lifetime. And so often when we think of our existence, we take care only of this physical level of our existence, the body, with that idea that it can be made perfect, pleasant, it can be fixed, it can be made a source of happening and of happiness and comfort in our life. So from a Buddhist perspective, it is holding to what is not pleasurable to be pleasurable. It is what is not happiness to be our ultimate source of happiness. And in fact, when we think of what we do during the day, from the time that we rise up in the morning up until we go to sleep, and even in our dreams, we try to come up with strategies to derive pleasure from our body. Maybe not in each and every moment during the day, but often our life is oriented towards reducing discomfort in relation to the body and finding more happiness, pleasure, comfort, protection with respect to the body. And so holding what is in the nature of suffering to be pleasant is another type of ignorance. And then there is ignorance with respect to what is called the self, who we are, and what other people are, or what things around us, the way that exist, the way that they exist. And we distort reality, the mode of existence, the way that things exist, in a variety of ways, from coarse levels to subtle levels. And so when we look at coarse level of distortions that we have with respect to who we are, if we look again at description of ignorance, we have ignorance holding ourselves to be permanent, to be indivisible and independent entities. That's a very coarse level of ignorance. And so we go through the motions every day in having that feeling, that sense as if we are permanent. We're not subject to birth and disintegration, or birth and death. As I said earlier, we go throughout our life with that notion that we still have an ocean of time ahead of us, as if we can ward off death. And of course, on an intellectual level, when we think of death, we will come to accept that one day we will die. We see people around us dying one by one, and we can also come to terms with our impending, upcoming death, and yet we still have that notion that it's far away in the future. Actually, now I remember that when I was in my 20s, one of my colleagues, I was doing software engineering, one of my colleagues joined a group that was called Immortality. And one day I was trying to figure out what's the goal with immortality, or the group that is called Immortality. And he said that if you train yourself to think that you will never die, you will indeed never die. And so I asked him, how does it work? And he said that, like, for example, if you think that you want to buy yourself this shiny dancing boots, shoes, and you think about it repeatedly every day, one day they will manifest. So it's the same thing with death. If you think to yourself strongly, I will never die, you will never die. So I believe that no one of us here thinks that indeed, if you think strongly, believe strongly that you will never die, it will happen. And yet we have ignorance that is clinging to a sense of a permanent self that is free from, not subject to birth and death. But also with that notion that is this entity that is me, the very core of myself, that is not only eternal, but it is a unit, indivisible unit. It is unitary. It cannot be broken into different parts. It is that concrete thing that is this makeup of who I am as a person. And also that self is completely independent. It is free from cause and conditions and such, and other things. And so it's a very close level of grasping at the self. In fact, all of us are impermanent. We are not permanent, we are impermanent. We depend upon birth, and we also die one day. We are not indivisible, but as people, as living beings, we depend upon parts. There is a parts of ourselves, like for example, when I look at myself, I have a body and a mind, but there's me of yesterday and the me of 2 days ago, and the me of at the age of 10, me as a young baby, me of my previous life. And so all of them are parts of who I am. I'm not an indivisible unit, entity. I'm pretty much dependent upon different parts. And also, of course, I depend upon multiple causes and conditions. So ignorance holding myself to be permanent, indivisible, and independent entity is another example of ignorance with respect to conventional reality. And so we can see that when we think of our life, when we think of the different emotions that operate in our mind, that run through our mind, so many of them are related to ignorance with respect to these levels of conventional reality. We develop attachment because we hold what is impermanent to be permanent. We develop, when we think of when we think of falling in love and developing a new relationship, or when we think of the attitude that we have with respect to ourselves, the attachment that we have to ourselves and to others is very much dependent on the expectation that things remain as they are, that we will not break down, that they will not change, that they will not disintegrate from moment to moment. And also attachment is very much related to holding to what is unclean to be clean. In a sense that particularly, definitely when we think of sexual attachment, sexual desire, now when that operates in our mind, of course, it operates in our mind. We are living beings, we are sentient beings, we are not free from attachment, we are not free from sexual desires. And when it arises in our mind, we only see positive and beautiful and desirable aspects. We are completely blinded to things which are not beautiful, not enchanting, not clean, and so forth. I mean, really, when we think of having a relationship, and part of a common relationship is also sexual desire or intimate relationship. I think that if in each and every moment in our life we would come to see and think of the things that operate inside our body, we'll probably have a much lesser degree of sexual desire operating in our mind. When we think that the things that our body excrete, the things, the way that food is digested in our body, when we think of the blood system, when we think of the lungs, the liver, and so forth, all the chemicals that run through those different organs, it will probably be a damper. It will damp our sexual desire in one way or another. And yet, when we are completely blinded to those things, we hold on to what is, would hold on to what is unclean to be clean, and we develop a strong sense of attachment and desire. And so many of our disturbing emotions are related to these coarse levels of ignorance, but the most fundamental level of ignorance is ignorance with respect to ultimate reality. Ignorance with grasp at inherent, independent, objective, and truly existent reality. And this type of ignorance is ignorance which totally buys into things exist objectively outside of our mind. When we think of the way that reality presents itself to our mind, the different appearances that done to our mind, it always seems to be it always seems to us as if things exist completely unrelated to the mind that sees reality. Particularly when I look at, for example, when I look at my computer and the different people that I see here in front of me. So I see here, I see Karen and Christine and Freddie and Joy and Stacy and Susan. Hi, Susan. Long time no see. How are you? All right, you're
Very
muted,
good,
but
thank you. Thank you.
it's very nice to see you. And so when we think of, no, when I think of all the people that I see here in front of me, there's that notion that all of you exist out there completely independently, independent from my mind that sees you in a particular way. Things appear to our mind, good or bad, negative and positive, and they always appear to our mind as if they exist completely objectively out there, as good, as bad, as attractive or unattractive, as goals that I want to achieve in my life or things which I want to completely check out, as if they exist completely outside of a mind that sees them in a particular way. As if something can be beautiful without a mind that labels that it's beautiful. As if something can exist as being completely repulsive and disagreeable without a mind labeling them, ascribing certain features to them, and determines them to be what they are. It's particularly now evident in our politics. You guys living in, most of you live in the US, I believe. And politics in the US is kind of going through a tumultuous cycle at the moment. And so, whatever might be your political views, it seems that the person on the other side, the person that you disagree with, has such disagreeable qualities which exist out there without your mind seeing them in a particular way. So whether you are a Trump supporter or whether you disagree with Trump, it always seems to be that, whoever might that person be, it always seems that the qualities exist completely objectively in the object without the mind seeing them in a particular way. And so ignorance, which grasps at things as if they exist objectively, in and of themselves by their own power, without a mind seeing them in a particular way, without a subjective mind, is the most fundamental type of ignorance. And there are different schools of thought within Buddhist philosophy, different Buddhist philosophies that try to untangle the connection, the relationship between the mind and its object. There are some philosophies that say that while there is a subjective reading to reality, of reality, a mind sees reality in a particular way and reacts to reality in a particular way. And so, of course, there is a subjective reality, a subjective reading of reality, but also there must be something that exists objectively in the object. And the combination of these two, something that is coming from the side of the object and the mind reacting to that object, is what is the makeup of our reality. It's like, just to illustrate that in a particular way, like, for example, when we think of an election process, we have someone running for presidency in Australia. I live in Australia, so prime ministry. Someone is running to be a prime minister. In the US is presidency. So someone has certain qualification. Not always they have the best qualification to be president, but they have something existing in them. And they also have a crowd of people that are supporting them, that believe that they can do a good job. And so there is a process as if that is coming from their own side. We vote for them. And once the election process is culminated, they receive the title, they receive the label, a president or a prime minister. So there is something that is coming from their side, some philosophies say, and a mind attaches a label on that, and boom, we have a president. And so some school of thoughts, such as, for example, the school of thought that is called the Madhyamika Svatantrika, believes in that. Whereas, according to Tibetan Buddhism, the high school of thought is called Madhyamika Prasangika, and they say that nothing exists from its own side. There's nothing that exists from the side of the object. Whatever exists only subjectively from the perspective of the mind. And so, if I go back to ignorance that believes in objective reality, ignorance that believes that things exist out there without being related to the mind, ignorance that strongly grasps that reality is, according to the Madhyamika Prasangika school of thought, is the mother of all evil, in the sense that this is the type of ignorance that is responsible for the onset of all other afflictive states of mind, to the actions that we take, and thereby all the suffering that we experience in myriad lifetimes within cyclic existence. And so what we have to deal with, what we have to undo, is this fundamental level of ignorance that believes in objective reality. And in some sense, it's very difficult to rid ourselves of this type of ignorance because we're so used to it, since we've become so accustomed to it since time without beginning and up until now. And we've placed so many imprints for grasping at objective reality, at inherent existence, true existence, things existing from the on-side, and so on and so forth. These are different terms that are used to describe the same type of ignorance. We're so used to it that whatever we see, whatever appears to a mind, it appears as if it exists completely in and of itself, by its own power, by its own right, in an objective sense. And our mind totally believes in these appearances. Currently, we have no ability whatsoever to suppress appearances of objective existence, as if things exist outside of our mind. And so we have grown so accustomed to believing in those appearances that it will take a very long time and humongous effort to undo this type of trust in reality that is untrue. How are we doing so far? Am I making sense? Or am I talking gibberish? If you have any questions, you can put your hand up and we can, and I can try to clarify whatever questions or doubts you have. Anyway, if I go back to ignorance, there are different levels of ignorance. And as I said, ignorance is in the wheel of life is one of the three poisons: anger, attachment, and ignorance. And so when we look at the mechanism of how afflictions arise, how do afflictions arise? And I think that this is what we're supposed to be doing in this session and in the next couple of sessions. I try to put it on a timeline, beginning with ignorance. So ignorance, or the most fundamental type of ignorance, is projecting independent, stable, and enduring reality onto things. Ignorance that projects objective reality out there. That's the first step. And the next step is incorrect attention. Incorrect mental attention is the attention that we pay to objects around us. And this incorrect mental attention is exaggerating positive qualities or exaggerating negative qualities, positive or negative qualities. And so to begin with, suppose that we come across something that we believe that will make us happy. I see, by the way, someone put up the hand. Is it me or somewhere else? Someone else? Maybe it's me.
It's on your screen.
Okay. And so to begin with, or to give you an example, I'm totally attached to coffee. For the past 2.5 years, I've been on the move. I left Chimerazic Institute with the idea that I want to attend more teachings with my teacher in India and my teacher in Taiwan, with Taisita Rinpoche. Taisita Rinpoche is now in his 70s. And so, you can never know how many years you still have with you. The teacher will still be there. So I thought it would be good to make myself more available to receive more teachings and to do more retreats. I haven't been doing too many retreats. I haven't done much at all. I've been on the move, traveling, translating, teaching, enjoying life. And a couple of years ago, when I was attending Mingyur Rinpoche's teachings in Nepal, a friend of mine pulled out this portable espresso machine that is actually made in the US by a brand called Out In Nano. And so I pulled out this espresso machine and showed me how even when you're on the move, traveling from place to place, you can make yourself nice cups of espresso. And so then it showed me that machine, that device, when we had a break during one day of teaching. And during the next session, rather than listening to the teachings, I was just making plans of getting this amazing coffee machine that will make my life on the move so much more pleasant and comfortable. I'll be able to extract coffee all day long from morning to evening. Even in my sleep, I might be able to make myself cups of coffee. And so there was that notion that if I only get that machine that in and of itself, objectively, in the object itself, in the coffee machine itself, my life would be made amazing. So I got it. And it is amazing so far. But also on top of that, then, this brand also put together a coffee bean grinding machine. And then if you have a coffee grinder, you also need a small scale, and you also need coffee canister. To cut a long story short, I'm traveling with a bloody heavy coffee kit. There's still in my mind, I have that idea that, my ignorance is telling me that story that there is the qualities of happiness and pleasure which are embedded in all that kit. And so not only ignorance projects that objective reality, but then incorrect mental attention joins ignorance and exaggerate positive qualities. If there are 50% of positive qualities in the object, incorrect mental attention exaggerates that and makes like an amazing 100%, 150% portion of good qualities within that object. But the same thing happens with exaggerating negative qualities. And we can see that often this is definitely evident in our relationships. So now I can see that with in my brother. No, I believe that my brother doesn't listen to these sessions. He thinks that a complete weirdo with being Buddhist, with being a Buddhist monk. We have good relationship, but Buddhism, I don't think that is made for him. And so trusting that he's not listening to a conversation, I'm going to speak about my brother. And so my brother is a serial groom. He falls in love, and then he believes that the person that he falls in love with will be the source of all the happiness here and hereafter. And then after a while, the person becomes the source of all of his problems and unhappiness. And so when I say that he's a serial groom, actually he's done it only twice. So not too much. But I think that it also happens to many of us, even to myself. When In the past when I fell in love with someone, it seems that kind of my happiness was dependent upon that one person. And if only I would have a relationship with that person, I'd be able to find long-term happiness and satisfaction. And then at some point when love was no longer present, I got the sense that if only I could be free, I could find true and real happiness. As if the source of my unhappiness is the relationship or the person that I'm in relationship with. I mean, none of my relationship ended up with hatred, with full-blown hatred, but it happens. Definitely happened with my brother, kind of one, I think that his first wife turned to be, for him, like this absolute monster, so from projective, absolute 100% positive qualities, it became absolute 100% evil qualities projected onto that person. So it happens with not only with the people that we're attached to, but also things in our possessions, with goals, with ideas, and so forth. Can you find examples in your life for exaggerating positive qualities and thinking that if only I get that thing that my mind desires, my life would be made absolutely pleasant forever and ever, here and hereafter? And examples of how there's something that is so disagreeable to your mind, and you think that if only that bloody thing is going to be removed, my life and everyone's life is going to be made so much better. I mean, definitely when we think about it in relation to modern day politics, we have that notion as if the absolute source of all evil is within the person that we disagree with, whatever our political views might be. And so we live in a world that is so polarized now. And I think that it's actually quite interesting. And when I lived in Echimeric Institute and was engaging with Buddhist community around me, I think that all of us are, what we call lefties, coming from the left side of the political map. And so, looking at American politics, I think that most of us thought that Trump is not a very good solution for the modern day reality of the USA. And then I was quite surprised to find that I had also some Trump supporters within my Buddhist circles, but also in Australia. We don't vote in the USA. We have almost nothing to do with American politics. And still some of my acquaintances became so emotionally involved with American politics. And so whoever might be the person that we like or that we dislike, that we agree with or disagree with, there's always the projection of 100% good qualities or 100% evil qualities, negative qualities projected onto that person. And it's also, I think, it is also in a circle of friends. When we think of people that we have been friends with, that we had deep connection with, we might have had a fallout with a certain person once upon a time. I can remember that in my, when I was working at Echimeric Institute, there was one guy we were good friends. He became the director of the center at some point. We used to go out sometimes to watch the movies. We used to go out to the movies to have a dinner. We had the same teacher. At some point, we had an argument at the office, and it escalated into a full-blown hateful scream match. And for weeks on end, I was fuming after that. And in like 1 minute, the person was a good friend of mine. In another minute, it became like the source of all my unhappiness, with 100% projection of evil qualities onto that person. So that's the second stage in the evolution of afflictive emotions, incorrect attention. And so incorrect attention exaggerates positive qualities, and then attachment arises with the thought, I want it, I need it. There's no way that I can move forward without getting this thing that is totally perfect. Same thing can happen with anger. So I project absolute negative qualities onto that thing and onto an object, and then I think, I need to destroy that. I need to remove that. I need to make that disappear. I need to get rid of that. I need to chuck it out. If I don't get rid of that, there's no way that I can be happy. Anger, hostility, hatred, and so forth arise from that. And so often it is said that attachment is, when we look at the description of attachment, it is said that it is like a drop of oil that is sipped into a cloth that it is so difficult to remove. I mean, I'm a messy eater. I drop a lot of butter or oil on my robes. And so I can see how difficult it is to remove. So I just buy new robes sometimes from time to time. And so attachment is just like a drop of oil that is sipped into a piece of clothing. That's when we get so obsessed with what our attachment wants. It's so difficult for our minds to become detached from the object. And I told that anecdote of sitting in a teaching session and contemplating, how will I get that coffee machine? It was impossible to listen to the teachings. It was impossible to obsessively, come up with strategies of getting a delivery to Kathmandu in Nepal. So, I think that it's quite a benign example of how attachment works. But when we look at other things in our life, things that we get attached to, and the mind tells that story as if only we get what our attachment was, our life will be complete and whole and happy, and we'll find satisfaction forever, ever after. And so attachment, the thought, I want it, desiring it. And then we have obstructions to what we want to get. So obstructing what we want, or giving me what I do not want. In Shantidev's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, for those of you who have had a chance to look through the text, to read the text, in the 6th chapter, the chapter on patience, I think that it's verse number 7. Shantideva describes the process by which anger arises, and he says that there's a sense of unhappiness that arises in our mind from not getting what we want or getting what we do not want. And this unhappiness is the fuel of anger. So this mechanism. First of all, we have attachment. We think that this is what I want, this is what I need. Then we either do not get what we want, something is obstructing us getting what we want, or we get what we do not want, this unhappiness that arises in our mind. And the next step is anger. So I'm going to look at this process. We have obstructing what we want, or giving us what we do not want, and then anger. I need to eliminate this obstruction. I need to rid myself of the thing that I do not wish for. So that's a general, I think, outline of the process by which ignorance, attachment, and anger operate in our mind. I think that Deb had a question. Let's look at the chat box. So the attachment to health. Certainly we can ascribe, when we think of, I think that we can look at attachment to health in a variety of ways from different perspectives. Attachment to health in that we think that if we only take care of a physical well-being, when we think that if only physically I maintain my body functioning, operating 100% in a good way, without taking care of our mind, without understanding that actually the most crucial factor, ingredient to our happiness is mental well-being, we can still remain miserable. I think that when we think of my life, I do notice that I pay too much attention to my body and not enough attention to my mind. In that, the only sports that I like is swimming. Now, I don't care about football, basketball. In Australia, we have Australian football, we have rugby league, and so forth. I don't care about all the sports. Cricket is boring, but swimming, give me swimming, I can go crazy. I did. Sorry for digressing with stories, but anyway, we need to be entertained from time to time. So I entertain myself from time to time. When over the years, I've done deity retreats at Chenrezig Institute, and normally we do them during the summer when it's hot. And the sunrise during the summertime is roughly at 4:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not a person that likes rising up early morning. If I can wake up every day at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd be happy. But often I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, when we do deity retreats, we had to wake up at 3:30 in the morning, and every day was a struggle. Waking up at 3:30, 4:30, and I was grumpy almost in each and every morning session. But then last year I came back to Australia from, I think I came back from Europe, and I came back a day before the Olympic began. And I think that the Olympics were held in Paris, and so the swimming finals were held at 3 a.m. in the morning, Australia time, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I set up an alarm clock every day to 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning with a song in my heart. No grumpiness, no unhappiness. It was kind of from the very get-go, I was completely pumped up to watch the swimming finals. And so, this, with kind of over the years, I've done some training in the swimming pool with the idea that, if I train my body, I can swim faster, but also I can maintain my body in a healthy condition. I can live longer, I can focus better, and those different things are true to a certain extent. But I was certainly more focused on kind of physical well-being than actually preparing my mind for dealing with different issues, different challenges in this life, and definitely next lifetime. So the question was about attachment to health. With attachment to health or physical well-being or mental well-being, often we thought this is also associated with that idea that we can ward off aging, sickness, and death. It is also associated with that idea that we can prolong our life, live a very long life that would be very satisfactory. My mom passed away in 2008, so I guess that it's how much? It's like 17 or 18 years ago. And she died after experiencing quite a few years of just physical breakdown. She had diabetes, and she had hypertension, and she had a few heart conditions. So bit by bit, the body was decomposing wouldn't say decomposing, but kind of the mechanism, the machine was breaking down from within. And she still had that idea that there are ways to fix the body. One day it will be okay. One day she can recover. One day she can be healthy. And so refusing to accept her own impending death, or refusing to looking at that notion that actually it cannot be fixed. Now we are going through a process by which, step by step, every moment that passes, we're getting closer and closer to the moment of death, and the process cannot be stopped. Of course, we can slow down in a certain way. We can try to maintain a healthy lifestyle. We can take medication, we can take treatment, but death will be upon us in one way or another. And so I think being obsessed with health as if there's something that we can do to reverse that process, of course, is related to attachment, but also it brings about unhappiness and a sense of distress. I'm not sure that actually I'm getting to what Deb is asking. Deb, am I going in the right direction? Okay, in the context of chronic illness. So I think that also for people that are involved with palliative care or supporting people that are undergoing debilitating chronic conditions, not all of them are terminal, but chronic conditions, when we think of ourselves and we think of others, we often try to soothe them in giving hope, providing hope that one day it will be okay. One day we'll be able to recover. I think that fortunately for me, having lived at Chinrezig Institute and worked as the translator for the Geshes at the center, I've had many encounters with people that were undergoing serious illness, either terminal sickness or chronic conditions that was painful, debilitating, both physically but also mentally. So now, having seen those situations, having received ample advice and that had to do with death and impermanence and the drawbacks of cyclic existence, I say that often we try to soothe other people, almost masking the notion of impermanence and death. And of course, when someone is undergoing chronic disease and the mind is not open to impermanence, sickness, and death, often it's not the right thing to just download on them, spew on them the idea that one day they will die, that it will be terrible and then at the end they will die. No, it's not necessarily the most skillful thing to do with other people, but we can certainly come to terms with our own impermanence and death. Not to the point where we make ourselves miserable, live in despair, but to make sure that we understand that, first of all, this is reality. This is our samsaric reality. But also, more important than our body is our own mind. Or more important than our body is our own mind. So rather than, of course, when we experience a chronic disease, a chronic situation, we need to find ways to feel more comfortable and also to maintain our body in a good, good space. But more important than that is try to maintain a good space of mind, a good state of mind, and prepare our mind not only for death, but also to life after death. And when we experience chronic condition, and at the end, terminal condition, if we then learn to accept our oncoming death, being able to relinquish whatever things we're attached to, in that the dying process can be made much better, much easier, but also it can bring about better states in future lifetimes. Someone just a second, I'm just going to close the door. Someone came in, opened the door and left it open, so I hear all the noise from the kitchen. Just a second. All right. So all those things are related to levels of ignorance, or the way that the mind distorts reality. If I continue with what I prepare for today, I hope that that I have answered or related to what Deb was asking. I wanted to start with attachment. And so according to, when we look at attachment in general, actually before I get to that, we normally speak of, in Tibetan, there are different words that describe the sense of desire. There is desire, there is attachment, and often we put them together. Detached, desires, attachment. The notion of wanting something. Not all our wishes and hopes and expectations are necessarily labeled attachment. I mean, we have certain things that we want, and we are not attached to them. We do not superimpose, we do not exaggerate the good qualities. We do not need to rid ourselves of all the different things, all our wishes, all the different things that we want, but also all of our wishes. Like, for example, I want to become enlightened. I want to become free from samsara. I want to live my life, still continue to live my life as a Buddhist practitioner. All those different things that I want are not necessarily attachment. So it's not that we need to stop wishing for something. Well, we need to stop, in a sense of, if we want to break free from suffering, if we want to stop the mechanism by which we, under this way of ignorance, we become attached to something, then we become angry if we do not get what we want, or we get what we do not want. We take actions on the basis of our anger that produce the suffering that we experience in our life. If we want to stop that mechanism, we need to reduce a sense of attachment and end it, in one point in time in the future. And so when we look at the way to describe attachment, there's one text that we use in our tradition, not only the Gelug tradition, but it's also used in other Tibetan Buddhist traditions. It is called in English minds and mental factors. And so it describes those different mental events that operate in our mind. There's a group, and we have a description in that text of 51 mental processes, 51 mental factors, and they are grouped into, as far as I remember, 6 groups. One of them is the 6 root afflictions. And of the 6 root afflictions, we have attachment. So there's a description of attachment in minds and mental factors. This is one thing that we, one description of attachment, but there's one that is more approachable in Lama Tsongkhapa's Lama Rinchen. It's more approachable, it's less technical, less dry, and also other descriptions of attachment. So let's try to see what Tsongkhapa says about attachment. So it says, attachment means noticing a pleasant or attractive external or internal object and desiring it. When attachment clings to its object and grows stronger, it is hard to tear yourself away from the object, just as it is difficult to remove oil which has soaked into a cloth. So similar to the analogy that I gave a few minutes ago. And then for mind and mental factors, a definition which is more technical, it says attachment is a mental factor that perceives a contaminated thing to be attractive by way of its own entity, and thereupon seeks it, it wants it. And so, particularly when I think about, if I think of mind and mental factors, like I think that, for example, if I mention the way the onset of a new relationship that we have, or we get attached to, when we get attached to another person, we have that notion that, first of all, the person that we desire, the person that we like, is attractive by way of their own entity, in a sense that objectively, within that person, the amazing qualities, without a mind seeing that person as being amazing. There are qualities, amazing qualities within that person. But not only that, also my happiness, my satisfaction is completely embedded within that person. When we fall in love head over heels, we don't think that it is our mind that makes us happy. It seems as if my happiness is completely within that person. But also when we think of not only another person, when we think of our body, when we think of the body of another person, if we think of not being attracted to another person. Now sometimes I wonder, is it possible to get into a relationship with another person without feeling any physical attraction to that person? Just as an open question, I guess that there are many PhD dissertations that have researched that notion, whether it is possible to have a relationship without feeling any form of physical attraction. Of course, I have friends in my life, and we have good friendship, deep friendship, which is not based on physical attraction. I just sometimes wonder, when we get into an intimate relationship, is it possible to have a relationship with another person without being attracted to them at all? Anyway, an open question, we can think about that. But when we think of this definition of attachment, it is a mental factor that perceives a contaminated thing to be attractive by way of its own entity. So a contaminated thing, the body is regarded as a contaminated thing from a Buddhist perspective. It is contaminated not in a sense that it is dirty in some sense, but contaminated from the perspective of it was produced under this way of afflictive states of mind and karma, of karma and afflictions. When we think of the samsaric mechanism, we are born in samsara with a body such as this, because we are controlled by anger, attachment, and ignorance, and because we have produced actions in the past, we have accumulated karma in the past, and under this way of karma and afflictions, we were born into a body such as that, which is by nature unclean, but it is also subject to birth, sickness, aging, and death, and getting what we do not want, not getting what we want, and so on and so forth. And so it is called a contaminated phenomenon. It is contaminated by the virtue of being under the sway of karma and afflictions. So when we perceive a contaminated thing to exist by way of its own entity, to exist objectively, and thereupon we seek it, we become attached to it. That's the definition of attachment, according to minds and mental factors. We perceive a contaminated thing to be attractive by way of its own entity, and thereupon attachment seeks it, it wants it. So this is what attachment is. And then in order to find tools and ways to reduce attachment, we first of all need to see in our own life what the problems are with becoming attached to different things. There are certain forms of attachment in our life which cause us a little damage. They're not serious. No, it's not serious levels of attachment, but there are certain levels of attachment in our life that inflict quite a lot of pain upon us. They create damage not only to ourselves, but also through attachment, we inflict pain on others. We create problems for ourselves and others. And so in order to find ways to deal with attachment, first of all, we need to see attachment as a problem, as an issue. So looking at the different drawbacks of attachment, this is the first step. Without seeing that there is a problem here, we're not going to be motivated to do anything about it. Now, without seeing any problem with anger, with hatred, we're not going to be motivated to do anything about anger or hatred. So first of all, I think that with attachment, the first step is to recognize how although attachment does come up with this presentation as if it's going to give us what we want, it's here to help us. Attachment is here to support us because it will give us happiness. Is to recognize that attachment disguises itself in that beautiful, as a beautiful friend, as a helpful friend, but it's actually it causes us problems in our life. It is true that because of attachment, we can experience pleasure in a sense that, I'm totally addicted to chocolate. Dark chocolate, bring it on. You can make me happy. And so with a sense of attachment, yes, I can experience pleasure, but it also compounds my clinging to samsaric things as if happiness is found up there and not within my mind. And so attachment has that presentation as if it's here to take care of me. Attachment will give me what I want. And then I take actions to give, to provide myself with what attachment needs. Not all the things that I do are destructive. Not all the things that I do are harmful to myself and others, but there's just still that trust in the working of attachment. And often I don't recognize that it is the type of thirst that exists within my mind. No, attachment is like being completely thirsty. And sometimes as if, even if there are oceans of water to be drunk, I will still be thirsty. I mean, to be kind of, if I were to confide in you in a certain, sense, a certain way. Now, I've been a monk only for 11 years. So, it's not a very long time. Sometimes I still feel like a baby monk. But when I became a monk, I think maybe 16 years or 17 years after encountering Buddhism. So I just took my time, I thought that when I'm ready to become a monk, I'll do it. And I found myself at some point at Chamresic Institute in Australia, and I lived in the same house with the Geshe. And there was a big monastic community around me. And so over time, I saw what a monastic life is about. And when the time came for me, when I felt completely ready to become a monk, I came here to Shambling Monastery, where I am at the moment, and became a monk. And I thought that I'm totally ready for that, that I've nailed down the fact that I don't want to have a relationship in this life, that I'm pretty happy being alone. I'm pretty happy being kind of single, but also that I'd be able to manage well, sexual desire or sexual attraction. And, soon after becoming a monk, rose up again. It's impossible to switch it off. Now it's way easier than at the very beginning. Why am I talking about it? Let me think. What was the point? Oh yeah, the point was that then I've noticed that with kind of this strong sense of attachment or desiring arising in my mind, that it is just like this strong thirst that can never be quenched. I mean, it can be quenched if I give this sense of desire what it wishes for. So often I think that with attachment, we are completely blinded to the faults of attachment. It does present itself as if it's here to take care of us. It's not here to harm us. But when we do not give our sense of attachment, that desire, immediately what it wants, and we just kind of observe that mental sensation, mental experience, we can come to see how attachment is a state of suffering. It is this unbearable thirst. And of course, as I said, we have sometimes just a little bit, small degree of attachment, but sometimes it's very big. So recognizing that it is painful, attachment is a form of suffering, even if it comes in a certain disguise, but also then thinking of all the different ways in which we act in order to get what we want. And I can think of occasions in my life, of definitely before my Buddhist times, but also being Buddhist, in which I found manipulative ways I used manipulative ways in order to get what my attachment wanted to. And in the course, I taught myself that story that it's okay to do it because it's going to be good on the long run. Now, if I do not tell the truth, if I'm not being honest with others, if I'm even taking advantage of others, if I'm taking actions at the expense of others, it's good. No, it's okay to do it. It's not that bad because I'm going to get what I want. And it's going to work out well on the long term, long run. And so having accumulated negative actions on account of attachment, being sometimes dishonest. This is also one of the drawbacks of attachment, but also looking at how under this way of attachment, a life is made so complicated, particularly at this day and age. When the world is experiencing so much material prosperity, it seems that it's never enough. We're depleting the resources of this planet. We're depleting the resources in our life in some sense. We're creating more environmental degradation, making problems not only for ourselves, but also future generations to survive on this earth. And so with attachment, it's never enough. And it brings a sense of distraction. And also when we look at that from a strictly speaking Buddhist presentation of how we cycle again and again in cyclic existence, from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination, attachment is so vital, indispensable for the 12 links of dependent arising. We have the links of craving and grasping, link 8 and 9, which are a form of attachment that activate a karmic imprint in our mind that projects us to another round, another life within cyclic existence. So without craving and grasping, it will not come to pass. It will not happen. So because of attachment, we find ourselves again and again in a cycle of existence. And so there are many such drawbacks to thinking of attachment. And there's a lot of think of the drawbacks of attachment, and that's the first step in finding ways, tools for dealing with our sense of attachment. Without recognizing the drawbacks of attachment, will not be inclined to do anything about it. We'll still be inclined to think that attachment is here to help us. Now, I think that our time is almost up for today. And what I thought I'd be able to do today is to start to look at different strategies or things that we can use in our daily life to manage our attachment. But since we're almost out of time for today, we will leave it for a next time, for our next meeting, which will be next Friday. And so we will start off with Friday my time, Thursday your time. What we'll start with next time is a brief meditation on the drawbacks of attachment. And then we will continue with looking at tools, mechanism for trying to reduce the sense of attachment. So if you have any last questions, comments, notes, parting words, please feel happy to pitch in. I'm there for my ailing mother and spend 4 or 5 hours every day to be by her side, so her caregivers take care of her. How do I look at this attachment? I think that first of all, you're in such an fortunate situation to be able to do so. So many of us don't have the ability to do so. Now, when both of my parents were in the last stages of their life, I was living far away. I was living in Australia, not being able to be there with my parents as they were aging. But also, to be honest, kind of on a mental level, I wasn't totally up to it. And so being able to kind of like to be being able to do it, at least from a Buddhist perspective, is such an amazingly meritorious way to repay the kindness of our parents. Um, and so I think that rather than thinking about it as a sense with a sense of attachment, and then of course when we think of the relationship that we have with others, we might be attached to our parents, to our children, to our brothers and sisters, and so forth. Maybe this is not the type of attachment that we necessarily need to rid ourselves to begin with. Maybe we have more other pressing areas in our life in which attachment is more detrimental to us. It is, I think that for us currently in our connection, in our relationship with our family members, it is impossible to completely separate love and attachment, to separate them out. But in general, when we look at like a cold-hearted, so to speak, description between the difference between love and attachment, love is wanting someone else to be happy. And attachment is involved with wanting ourselves to be happy. So yeah, we have both of them. And we have both of them in our connections, relationship with others. And it's impossible for us at the moment to completely separate them out. Ideally, if we'd be able to do that, to completely rid ourselves of attachment and have only pure love to others, that'd be amazing. Now, hands down, it'd be totally amazing. This is what we want to do. But we also need to keep, to cut ourselves some slack. We are not there yet. And so, we want to reduce attachment and increase love. And so when we think of helping someone in need, like for example, helping your ailing mother, if we can do that on the basis of wanting them to be happy. And happiness is a big word. Happiness comes in so many different forms. It's not just mental happiness, it's physical comfort, physical security, being more satisfied, less insecure, wanting to be loved, mental quiescence, and so having meaning to our life. If we can help others in so many different ways to find that, just to be more happy in the mind, that would be great. And if we can definitely help someone in the last stages of their life to accept the fact that, at some point it will be over, that would be good, but not always it is easy. When my mom was in the last stage of her life, she didn't want to hear about impermanence and death. Speaking to her about impermanence and death would be, was totally unskillful from my side. And so we have to assess with skillful means to see what do they need. If they need to hear about God, I'm going to speak to them about God. If they need to hear or to if they're thinking of wanting to not be separated from everything that is so dear to their heart, so we can help them to kind of maintain that close relationship with whatever is close to the heart in order to soothe the mind in whatever way we can. And so trying to not to put less emphasis on our own mental happiness and be there more for others is, I think, one way of dealing with that sense of attachment. Yeah, being able to put your life on hold, it's an incredible thing to do. Not everyone, I think that very few people are able to do so. So I think that at least from my side, I totally rejoice in your ability to do that. Scarlett?
Hello. I was just
Hello.
wondering, yeah, that is really wonderful of that person. I think Lakshmi, caring for her parent. Actually, I'm doing the same thing. I have like six siblings, actually five, including me, six.
Mm.
Two have checked out. Actually, three have checked out. So it's like three, but I'm the one out of the three sort of doing all the heavy lifting and just the
Mm.
day to like the all the appointments and all the, you know, the everyday needs. And I can't help but to I have aversion. I have like complete aversion and complete anger. Like, and I don't know how to control this because I just lash out on my
Yeah.
siblings, the ones that want, like the one that is willing to, like, be supportive. I just lash out because I'm just so angry that, everything is dumped on me and I'm the youngest, right?
Yeah.
So what skills do you recommend that I, practice or look into? Because I do want to turn my dad is at his last stage of his life, right? So I do want to turn that into love, but I don't think there are times that I have pure compassion and I like just want to do everything and anything for him. And then there are times I resent that I have to do it. I'm just so angry that I have to. And I want to be better because I don't like he's 95 and I don't like how like frustrated inside I feel.
Mhm. I think that, in some sense, when, I think that I'm not that good in giving an answer to that because I had the same thing happen to me. I had a massive fallout with my brother, when me becoming really angry and upset with my brother over that. We are not talking to, he hasn't been talking to me for, I think, 11 years. So, so maybe
Mhm.
I'm not the right person to give advice on that kind of things. But actually, in hindsight, I mean, jokes aside, in hindsight, I think that I would have done things differently. So it's definitely a big question. And I think that as it happened, it happens in so many different families that when the parents are aging, and we need to, um, we need to attend to them, or not only to our parents, sometimes to family members. Some do more and some do less, and we react to that in such an emotive way. And so I think that first off, the first thing to do is think of actually what is the thing that, and when we get angry and frustrated, we need to recognize that, anger, frustration, and so forth are not useful for dealing with the situation because they're making ourselves miserable. So it's kind of easier said than done to kind of, when I say don't give in to despair, to disappointment, to angst, to being frustrated and so forth, easier said than done because we feel those emotions, they arise in our mind. But then to remind ourselves that they make us, those emotions make us miserable, but also they rob us of the ability to react to a situation to a certain situation in a way that is more balanced. As you say, you lash out at your siblings, you feel resentful, you feel angry, and so forth. It's almost impossible to avoid that, but we remind ourselves that, first of all, with being miserable, this is what happens. With allowing unhappiness to dwell in our mind, we end up being angry. So that's the first step. But also when we then think of, when we over time when we attempt to shift the focus from ourselves to others, try to develop an attitude of cherishing others more than we cherish ourselves, over time we have a better capacity to dealing with situations like that. It's not an easy thing to do. When I say shifting our focus from cherishing ourselves to cherishing others, I'm not being self-critical here, or critical of you, or critical of me at the moment. It's rather that I've noticed that when I react to a situation in being angry, in thinking, like, for example, why is it only me that has to carry the load all the time? Why it is not others? Why others are not helping? And how long will I be able to do so, and so on and so forth? Really, what I'm thinking of mainly is myself. And when
Totally.
I and when I think constantly of myself, I cannot deal with this anger or frustration, distress that arises in my mind. And so shifting the focus and thinking of the welfare of others. First of all, you spoke about your father, being kind of more concerned about that and trying, kind of thinking in what way can we be helpful to him, is helpful in shifting the focus to look at someone else. and reducing kind of this, this self, being absorbed mostly in ourselves. And when our mind is more I think that when our mind is more balanced, in that it's less agitated, less frustrated, and so forth, we can also then be straightforward with others without it escalating into being angry. And of course, it's very difficult. I think that when I said that I had a fallout with my brother because I was angry and he was angry because myself and my sister were carrying the load and he did almost nothing. I think that, if I was able to talk to him without being angry, without being out of control in that sense, maybe we would have been able to work out the situation where he would have been more helpful. Maybe yes, maybe no, but certainly not ending up in the end kind of in completely breakdown of our relationship. So, it's just things I can say in hindsight, because, during the time I wasn't able to practice it in a very good way. What I'm saying is that if I know you can point out problems in others, the way in which they're acting in a way that is unfair, sometimes dishonest, not compassionate, not caring for others. You can do that without feeling angry. And you can do it in a way that is more constructive and better. But it's easier said than done, because we need to develop skillful means in that. There's many other things I can say, Scarlett, but maybe I'll leave it here for today, and I will think of more points and I'll try to bring them up at the beginning of our next session. I'm just mindful that we're already a little bit over time. And
Yes.
behind me, I'm sitting kind of behind me is the dining hall, and it's becoming full of people. And so it's difficult to concentrate. So I apologize.
No, thank you.
So I will try to think of a few more points for our next session. We should leave it here for today. I don't know if I prepared some, I can't remember if I prepared some words of dedication. Let's see. I haven't. All right. So when we finish, rather than reciting a verse now, I'll prepare some verses of dedication for our next time. Rather than reciting something now, let's just kind of think that whatever we got out of today, whatever positive intention we got out of today, whatever understanding we got out of today, if it is just a little bit, or some points, good points that we can use for today or coming day for the rest of our life, we're going to dedicate them for making our mind better. May we be able to make our mind better, which means a healthy mind, a mind of well-being, a mind of happiness, so that we may be able to not only be of better benefit to ourselves, but better benefit to all of those that we come in contact with. For when we think of our long-term happiness and well-being, we often think of dedicating whatever we can to becoming Buddha, so that we'll be able to be of benefit to all mother sentient beings, but really it starts with our close surroundings. So may we be able to use tools for reducing our anger and attachment to affect our immediate surrounding in a better way. And if we affect our immediate surrounding in a better way to become more harmonious and pleasant, we'll be able to create long-term ripples to work towards our end goal, to become free from samsara and become Buddha ourselves for the benefit of others. May all of that come to pass. And thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure to see all of you in this early morning today, late night, or maybe not that late US time. May you have a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.